Well, hello, that's me again. Today is June 7th, 2024. It is Friday. Thank God it's Friday. And let's start a little bit with the review of the news, and then I will explain to you the issue of the losses and why they are, which they are huge, and why Vladimir Putin decided to kind of disclose, the real size of the suffering, essentially, which is brought upon armed forces of Ukraine by all those great generals from NATO. But let's start with this. First, we have the situation with Mr. Macron, just trying to, show that he is a great guy, he's awesome, But even Politico actually today states that the two leaders will meet in France, well, which obviously the Normandy landing, it is anniversary, where Russia wasn't even mentioned. If not for obviously Red Army, there would have been no D-Day, but it's, it's history, all right? But here is the issue regarding Mr. Macron's desire to send the troops to Russia, whatever troops France has. So, and what they report that Biden was not supportive. The American president expressed concern about the potential consequences of sending troops from any NATO country into the place where they could wind up in the line of fire and lead to an escalation of the conflict, according to two people familiar with the conversation. It is all, of course, BS. It is complete BS because American troops are already there, and as many times it has been stated, guess who puts their flight plans into all those attacks and targeting and things of this nature, who mans whatever is remaining of the US supplied and NATO supplied air defense complexes. These are not Ukrainians. So, and we'll talk about this when we'll be talking about losses. So it's all crap, but yeah, they are afraid. Now, Mr. Macron being what he is, I mean, a clown, basically, with the country which is a chihuahua in military and economic terms, he starts talking about sending the, Mirage 2000, 5 version to Ukraine. And so Mr. Macron speaking at, Normandy landing, and we know that France obviously was one of those great victors, wink, wink, of the World War II. And he talks about that tomorrow we'll launch a new cooperation and announce the transfer of Mirage 2005 fighter jets to Ukraine, made by French manufacturer Dassault, and train their Ukrainian pilots in France. Sure, again, it doesn't matter what kind of planes are being sent or will be sent, if they ever will materialize there. They will be all shut down, and it doesn't matter what kind of training they do there, because there is only Air Force right now in the world which has an incredible score against their near peer Air Force, which was the Air Force of Ukraine. And it wasn't, how to put it politely, I don't even know how to explain this all, but the hysteria continues. We have this incredible article, which is about like 2 paragraphs really in their national interest. It's a rag. It's basically, pretty much most of the US and Western media are tabloids, but look at this. Some Ann Pierce, who was something of a political science and some bureaucrat from the swamp, she talks about that NATO must stop Russia now. Much time has been lost. Many opportunities for preemption, deterrence, and collective action have been squandered. It is past time for NATO to stop Russia. All big words. She obviously doesn't understand what those words mean. It's all, this pseudo-constructs, the same as, for example, as the red lines. Red lines is not Russian, it was concocted strictly in the Western media, and they use this, while, for example, Russians don't use red lines except for the other, media and journalists from Russia who are also illiterate as their Western counterparts. But, they love to use the words red lines, but we'll talk about this later. And so she goes on in this rant, and she said, best fear of escalation, but NATO must stand strong. It is weakness and procrastination that allow Russia hostilities and atrocities to escalate. There is no good alternative to peace through strength and no excuse for inadequately investing into defense industrial base and military modernization. And as she reports, this lady, as an admiral at a conference I attended, remarked, Putin believes time is on his side. If Europe isn't going to step up now with war in Europe, when? Well, let me put it this way. At this stage, you can't quote me. Any top brass admiral or general in the United States has no clue what modern war is. And so all their knowledge about warfare is absolutely obsolete, and they do not understand that. I mean, they simply have no reference point. And so it's not that Putin believes, it's just that these guys, they won't pass even the entrance exams to any Russian officer college, because they will have to come up with a serious set of skills and knowledge. But yes, they continue to believe all this crap from the media. And her name of this Ann Pierce is just, yeah, she's an appointed member of Princeton University's James Madison Society and was a political science series editor for Transaction Publisher and blah, 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 blah. So she goes complete hysterical, and it's not her alone. Then suddenly we have other things which begin to really appear. And, well, here's an Italian defense minister who gets a little bit more realistic, and he talks about the talk of attacks on Russian soil won't scare Moscow. And this is what I'm trying to explain to them. And countries that make public statements demanding that Western nations allow Ukraine to use their weapons for long-range strikes on Russian soil aren't helping Kyiv and will only irritate Moscow. Italian Defense Minister Guido Crosetto said. He said, you know, must be used for the defense of Ukraine, those weapons, but they cannot be used on the territory of another country. Well, what can I say? Obviously, it is all, as I continuously stress, it is all verbiage. It is all smoke and mirrors. It is all creating of this tense situation to control the public, brainwash it, and, you know, just scare the hell out of it, you know. But, then we have Mr. Jonathan Feiner. Look who is Mr. Jonathan Feiner. Who Mr. Jonathan Feiner is, we'll talk about it. And here it is. So the White House recognizes the complexity of the situation on the battlefield in Ukraine. According to Feiner, there are often claims that this or that weapon can radically change the situation on the battlefield in Ukraine. But this is not a conflict of this kind. The best confirmation of this is that we have already provided Kyiv with many systems that people have spoken about in a similar way. Well, people who spoke about in a similar way in the West, they are militarily illiterate, including people which are cadre officers. They have no clue what they're talking about. And so he talks that, and although we believe that this served to support and strengthen Ukraine, it did not entail fundamental changes. Ultimately, none of the systems caused fundamental changes, he stressed. I think many of us did not fully realize that the key factor in modern warfare will remain the production of not high-tech weapons but extremely important ammunition with which we are lagging behind in European partners, he admitted. Well, the problem with Feiner, and I will explain why the problem, is that Russia not only just outproduces by order of magnitude the production of their weapons, not high-tech weapons as he's talking, but actually United States and NATO combined is not even in the same league. And we are talking about also order of magnitude in terms of production of the high-precision, smart, you know, standoff weaponry. Not even close in terms of the advanced missile technology, as I already stated. Quote me. United States and NATO obviously just lost the arms race there. So, but Feiner also expressed his assessment that the United States does not consider last year's counteroffensive attempt by Kyiv to be a failure. Well, of course not, because as I already stated, most what they can do is PR. Look attentively at the background of Mr. Feiner. Oh, what a fine background Mr. Feiner has. Feiner is a native of Norwich, Vermont. He's the eldest of Baba. But look at this. He even worked for Labour Party, but while at Harvard, he covered sports for the Harvard Crimson. He earned a Juris Doctor from Yale Law School, where he co-founded the Iraqi Refugee Assistance Project, which is a very laudable thing to do, and I applaud him for this. But the problem is, has the Master of Philosophy, whatever, International Relations from Balliol College, Oxford, where he was a Rhodes Scholar. Feiner also spent a year in Hong Kong as a Henry Luce Foundation scholar working as a reporter and the editor at the Far Eastern Economic Review. Feiner was a foreign and national correspondent at Washington Post. So, yeah, this is not exactly background where you can really have any understanding of serious military issues and warfare, but hey, if he says that, you know what, the counteroffensive wasn't a success, then I guess that it was not. But let me also comment on something of this nature. And as you can see yourself, RIA reports, and based on the information from the Cuban Defense and Foreign Affairs Ministry, in the period from June 12 to June 17, 2024, a detachment of the Navy of Russian Federation consisting of the 4 ships will pay an official visit to the port of Havana. The frigate Gorshkov and the nuclear submarine Kazan plus 2 other support vessels will be in this detachment. This is a wowzer. The reason it is wowzer, not that Gorshkov, by the way, carrier of Zircon, but the fact that a newest submarine, as cruise missile submarine Kazan of the Yasin class, extremely advanced, will be there, is a message, and a huge one. And people think that, oh yeah, because they are there, the Zircon carriers, and of course they carry also Onyx anti-shipping missiles. Well, they also can attack land, and calibers and things like that, with the calibers having the range of 2,500 kilometers, and this its latest version, 3M14M, having the 4,500 kilometer range. There's nothing like in the NATO's arsenal which even can rival this, not even in the same vicinity. But the point is not that they are there to demonstrate. Obviously, they demonstrate flag. It's clear, but this is not some kind of the huge demonstration of force. No. People have to understand. The Russians don't do this. They don't basically thump themselves in the chest and say, what, we're so great. No, they are there to demonstrate a completely different thing. Of course, they can attack Norfolk, for example. God forbids it comes to this, and nothing could be done about it because you cannot shoot down, simply those missiles. But this is what I drew for actually my Russian channel. And this is called shipping lanes of communications. As you can see yourself, don't pay attention on the Russian word Raspaltsovka, which means the fingering, literally, where it's the red dot where the strategic sea lift, if United States decides to really go to war with Russia, will try to, ship there all those strategic sea lift vessels, with their battalion and brigade sets of the weaponry or the hardware to either Bremenhaven and not Rotterdam, which will be annihilated by that time if they decide to do this. But also there is also in the green you can see yourself the southernmost route they need to take, which will be towards obviously Italian ports and Spanish and French ports like Marseille. The problem is what is in those rectangles. It's the blue rectangle is approximately 9 million square kilometers. The same goes for the yellow rectangle, not yellow, well, it's kind of green kind of type thing. So, and the reason the central lines, and from the both up and down of those center red lines, you have the range of the Onyx cruise missiles of about 800 kilometers. So, and as you can see yourself, just the presence of these two assets, Admiral Gorshkov and Kazan, both carriers, as you already were told, calibers, Onyx, and Zircon, two of them can actually create a havoc in those shipping lanes of communications, and especially Kazan, which is, of course, submarine. And you are looking at combined, in case, God forbids, it comes to this, probably around 18 million square kilometers of the area which U.S. Navy will have to conduct an anti-submarine search to find at least one sub. Good luck doing this, okay? This is physically impossible, and of course, that's what it means. That, well, let me put it this way. If somebody still exercises these stupid ideas to do something about the conventional war in Europe against Russia, they will not be able to resupply and sustain any force by the US Army. Simple as that. Practically all the shipping will be totally paralyzed, even considering the fact that United States has about, well, 20, I don't think so, they are really 20, they're probably fewer than that, submarines of Virginia class. This is the only other significant anti-submarine warfare asset which they have. Other than that, don't even go there. And of course, you know what, we don't know how many carrier battle groups will be sunk if they decide to go and try to do those escort operations. So this just shows you the impossibility of this. And this is just the part of it. And Larry Johnson, my dear friend, who is in St. Petersburg right now on the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum, he also spoke about this whole situation with the Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Davis yesterday. And he talked, that's what Larry reports, that I told Danny that I fully anticipate that Russia will provide Islamic insurgents in Syria and Iraq, as well as the Houthis, with weapons that can hit US and NATO targets in Syria and the Red Sea if Ukraine expands attacks in Russia with Western weapons. Putin and Lavrov are that as serious, which I agree. And Mr. Putin already stated. So, you know what, we already know that United States Navy and basically NATO navies failed to uphold their shipping lanes of communications in the Red Sea against the ragtag force of Houthis, who scored a huge naval victory without having any navy. They paralyzed the Red Sea shipping lanes. Guess what? If you look at the statistics, they're shipping down by 90%. So now, can you imagine when you have the modern weapon systems coming in? And yeah, while those chihuahuas from London and Paris try to threaten Russia with, you know, striking her territory and things like that, not as if they didn't do that before, but Russians had enough. And again, Russians do not issue red lines. They just say, we don't want to deal with this. Okay, and then they patiently wait until the common sense kind of hits those people. It didn't. Well, guess what? France has a lot of interests outside France. United Kingdom has a lot of interests outside United Kingdom. United States has a lot of bases around, and they do not understand, because those people in Pentagon, they are stuck in the realities of the 1980s, 1990s warfare at best. They do not understand that their bases are liability. They do not provide any serious support for any kind of the serious operation against the serious enemy, because they are fat, unmovable targets. And you know what, it's just not even, well, Iran demonstrated a couple of times what it all means. And this is just Iran, guys. So you want to try this with Russia, you're going to end up dead. And I mean talking about that in the industrial quantities, because Russia is not going to announce, for example, how El Tanf now in Syria, which is the US base where they train terrorists and all kinds of the Islamic jihadists, so how it will come under fire. Because some people, you know, suddenly will get some interesting weapons, and you know what, after that make your own conclusions. So it takes two to tango, you know, two can play the game. And so that brings us to this issue, and the issue of the losses. What people do not understand what is being said, and I applaud finally Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin for coming out and saying what I've been saying for a year at least regarding losses. Here what we have, Mr. Putin comes out and, you know what, talks about the losses of the armed forces of Ukraine. And the way he talks about it is very simple. Look at this. This is for the lay people. Now, after that, I will explain how professionals view it. Look at this. Putin says Ukrainian losses 5 times higher than that of Russia. I will explain why many people expect a larger number. Actually, it's more than 5 times higher, but here it is. And here's Mr. Putin says, the armed forces of Ukraine are losing at least 50,000 service personnel a month, 5 times more than the Russian military, Russian President Vladimir Putin said on Wednesday. According to our estimates, finally we had the estimates, the Ukrainian army loses about 50,000 people every month, Putin said in response to a question, adding, and keep in mind, focus on this, that the ratio of sanitary and irrecoverable casualties was about 50-50 for Ukrainians. What does it mean? That out of those 50,000 estimated, roughly 25,000 are irrecoverable. They're done. They're KIAs and maimed beyond the recognition, and they just might be counted as well as that. So 25,000 a month of them are gone forever. 25,000 are sanitary losses. They are either taken from the battlefield, or walk themselves and go into hospital, and after being fixed and treated, they go through some recovery time, and they might return. So, and he talks about that irrecoverable losses was at least 5 times less for Russia than those incurred by Kiev forces. And he talked about the POWs. There's around 1,300 Russian POWs and about 6,500 Ukrainian POWs. And now let me explain what it means. We have people in my blog, which are, by the way, they are totally legitimate questions, and why they are asking about. Here's my response to one of my good friends and users that I explained to him, and he talks about what is going on there. Try to get this math right. Losses are both KIAs and wounded. I was talking about irretrievable losses of armed forces of Ukraine, which are put by Putin as half of overall losses, which are 50,000 monthly. And keep in mind, we are almost 30 months now in the special military operation. You apply wrong calculation benchmark here. Thus, in 30 months, all VSU losses, armed forces of Ukraine losses, including sanitary, you get to the hospital, they fix you, you come back to the front, are not 25,000 times 30, but 50,000 times 30, which is 1.5 million losses. By this token, Russian all losses are supposed to be 1.5 million divided by 5 equals 300,000. But here is the reality. Russian field medicine is orders of magnitude more efficient and fast than that of armed forces of Ukraine, whose atrocious level is reported widely by Western mainstream media. That tells you immediately that the share of Russian sanitary losses in the aggregate losses by Russian army is possibly 10 to 12 times higher than that of Ukraine. And that means that a vastly larger number of Russian wounded, 300s they called, return to active duty. This is precisely why I used irretrievable only KIAs, MIAs, and severely wounded. And what does it mean? Let me give you some explanation. Ukrainian field medicine is not just atrocious, it's criminally atrocious. The level of and that's where, again, Russians come with the estimates. Nobody counts those KIAs and MIAs and 300s in the tactical, let alone operational rear. And they lose there every day somebody, sometimes in hundreds. And here is the question, or rather the issue. Here are American so-called volunteers, wink, wink, who are, well, you know what, it's New York Times in 2023, speaks about the Army Lenchtul Regional Medical Center has quietly started admitting Ukrainian army soldiers who were wounded in combat, most of them American volunteers. Huh, okay. So they begin to get them into the lunch stool. Okay, here is one of those. Look how he describes their field medicine in Armed Forces of Ukraine. I was evacuated in a wheelbarrow, the Air Force veteran recalled. I woke up during surgery because I didn't get enough anesthesia. He cited, then added, the Ukrainians, they do the best they can, but there are so many wounded. Some of these wounds had been open for, get this, 2 weeks. When he arrived in lunch stool, he said. Surgeons quickly operated to remove rusty metal fragments left by a grenade. And so he said, I was wounded in Ukraine 3 weeks before they told me it would be a month before I got surgery. In Germany, they did it in 2 days. So now ask yourself a question. How many of those people, those wounded from Ukraine, do not survive? Well, I have some news for you, majority. And actually, some of them are very much in the pipeline for the organ trade, basically. And many of them provide those valuable organs for many people in the West. And those rich people who need their whatever, livers, lungs, whatever. So guess what? There are cases of deliberately killing of the Armed Forces of Ukraine wounded. Well, there are other doctors, quote unquote, in Armed Forces of Ukraine, for example, who performed the vivisection on Russian POWs. This is Nazi level. Well, actually, those people will be thrown out of SS and Gestapo for cruelty. But here we are. And then we have actually the explanation of the, you know what, Ukrainian medics themselves, you know, and here they are. Doctor of the Armed Forces of Ukraine criticized medicine at the front. So, and she is the big medical honcho for the whatever Bulls Da Vinci Battalion. And Alina Mikhailova, she reports the publication Strana UA. Everything is bad in frontline medicine. It is held in spite of, not thanks to. And this is our reality. We're trying to fight. The doctor criticized the current situation. It was in the end of the so-called successful counteroffensive. Guess what? Since then, and they went into the counteroffensive being really packed and supplied with everything. Well, guess what? Now it is order of magnitude worse. I will explain why. So, according to her, the evacuation of the wounded can take 8 hours. Have you heard, guys, about the golden hour? Yes, the golden hour is where you have to get your wounded immediately, and that gives him a chance. Well, can we be proud of this? No. Can we influence it? Yes, we can reduce it to 2, 3, but we cannot provide an hour, Mikhailova explained. So that is why we can assume that huge percentage of those wounded simply do not survive. Earlier, foreign surgeon Samir Attar described the injuries of Ukrainian soldiers who were blown up by mines as a mess of tendons, bones, and muscles. The anatomy is completely broken, disfigured, it cannot be restored. And this is the reality. And let's take a look, for example, what do we have today? As you can see yourself, today, another 1,500 wounded and killed. Well, guess what? As I already stated, you can... probably 10-20% of them really wounded survive. The rest of them are just killed. And that is why I always say, yeah, you can kind of use this number in terms of general benchmark, if you wish, or bottom line for KIAs. It sounds horrible. And today, tanks and APCs 12, you know, armored vehicles 25, artillery mortars 38. So the slaughter continues. And it doesn't matter what they do. It doesn't matter what they're equipped with. I mean, you don't have the army there anymore. What you have are those so to speak, storms, you know. And what can I say? So to understand why Putin says that average, what he says for throughout 30 months, here is the, for example, maximum which was reached at 22nd of March of 24. And then they, Russians killed and wounded, well, 2,765 people. So if you take the minimum, which actually happened later next month, April, it was about 500 a day. So if you kind of get this whole data and then you kind of adjust to what Mr. Putin stated, you indeed get up to 50,000 monthly killed and wounded. And when you look attentively, and this is what they estimate just based on the, again, very, very conservative estimates by Russian Defense Ministry. So we're looking, if you have any clue what we're talking about, and I explained it, we are already into 1 million KIAs at least, and probably other million wounded. And actually, I think so the number is even larger. And the situation on the front proves it. They want to try to some kind of counteroffensive. It's not counteroffensive. It's killing more people. And American generals who planned this together with this nincompoops from London, I have one friend of mine who sent me a message. He said, you know what, my friend, major at that time of Ukrainian armed forces, before it was, you know, it really went to, you know, completely bananas in 2014. He said he already knew that what was going on. He wrote the what is called report, which is basically he retired and moved into Russia because he knew it. He is a Russian person. But he said we had this, you know, people from Sandhurst, Colonel, coming into, you know, those, you know, teach those, you know, stupid Ukrainians how to really fight, you know, because British are really good at combined arms operations. And he said he was, you know, moving this pointer on the map, or the chart, tactical chart, and talking about how you have to attack. And so the one guy from, you know, behind the row of the chairs asked, and what you gonna do if you are actually get under the artillery fire? And this colonel from Sandhurst, he looked at him like he was mad, completely mad. He said, what artillery? That's the level of the Western NATO military professionals. They are a joke. And as the result, they killed more than 1 million Ukrainians. They will kill more. And no matter what they will provide them, whatever the Wunderwaffen, if you wish, you know. So they better go back to school and learn about the real war. Especially since they didn't even bother to mention Operation Bagration and all negotiations and settlements in the Tehran Conference in 1943, where the Soviet Union promised and delivered for the Western allies that it will do its utmost to relieve the pressure on them when they will be landing in Normandy. So, what can I say? This is what I wanted to tell you today, guys. And as always, guys, those who like what I do, please subscribe to my channel. And those who can afford, please provide me with support through Patreon or buy me a coffee and two. I will go and use it on the, you know, cotton socks, bottle of Jack. So what can I say? Have a nice Friday, guys, and have a nice weekend. And I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.